Welcome, everyone. Good to see you.
Morning.
Hello, good to see you.
Hello.
Right.
Hi,
Now we
everyone.
can-
Hello.
What do you think? We could say hi. All right.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi. Hi there.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to see everybody for sure. My name is Liz. It's Liz Lewinson, and I am Chief Executive Officer of the Frederick E. Lenz Foundation for American Buddhism. And we have been operating since 2002. Since that time, we've given out, as of now, $9.1 million in grants, and it's to over 300 organizations. Since the number's a little fluid right now because of the new grantees, I can't tell you the exact number, but it's over 300. To provide some context for this particular call, we frequently have a grant theme, and in 24-25, the grant theme was Women Leaders in Buddhism. And that theme was very closely tied into one of the main interests and missions of the Lenz Foundation, and that is to focus on the power of women. This was one of the core teachings of Frederick Lenz since back in the 80s. And this was a time that we have all this is stated on our site, that women are inherently powerful, and that this power is a fluid built into the subtle body of a woman's fluidity. This power has been repressed. Now we know that, all of us on the call, for millennia, it's been repressed for a long time, such that women have actually been taught or programmed in many ways that now it's our job to undo the programming. So as part of Women Leaders in Buddhism, this was a time when we gave out 60 grants. We actually have started these meetings earlier. They're posted, the talks are posted on our website, where grantees gave brief talks. And then afterward, we had breakout rooms, which were so warm and wonderful, like we have today, where people meet each other and share what's going on with their different programs. So this meeting today is a continuation, and it's also a new beginning, because we're starting today with different themes that we picked up from a survey that we took, and also the theme of winter, which is about stillness and clarity. I also wanted to say that when we did our first meeting, we formed a advisory committee that's been great, and that advisory committee consists of Susan Shea, Irene Rockwell, Esmilda. Let me get my names up all here so I get everything right. Esmilda Abro Hornbustle, Keegan, Anna Breckenridge, Tara Templin. And we work together to come up with different ideas and just different ways to present, to approach this idea of the empowering women in the Dharma in different ways. So that's what we'll be doing today. And now I'd like to turn it over to Susan Shea, our facilitator. And Susan's a senior teacher in the Shambhala community. She is also a leadership coach, artist, and organizational consultant. She founded and taught the Authentic Leadership Program at Naropa University for 20 years, and she continues to teach leadership today. She's been a catalyst for positive change for executive teams, boards of nonprofit organizations, businesses, and government agencies for over 25 years. So she's a great facilitator, and then she will introduce our guest, Diane Musho Hamilton Roshi.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Liz. It's always fun to work with you, and we've been, I don't know, I've worked on a variety of projects with the Lenz Foundation over the last 10 years or so. So lovely
Stop
to be with
talking.
them.
You can go.
Could everyone please mute? Pamela, yeah, you can mute people. Great. So I'd like to just invite us to land here and take a few moments. So yeah, find a comfortable seat. And let's just tune into our bodies. How are you today? Do a quick scan from toes to the top of your head. Just notice, what is it like to be in my body today? How do I feel? What am I noticing? And let's just welcome all of it. So whatever you're experiencing right now, say hello, welcome it, embrace it. And moving on to how we are experiencing ourselves emotionally at the moment. What are you bringing to this meeting? Maybe some feelings of anticipation. I don't know, maybe you've been very busy before coming into the meeting and just finding a way to settle. Whatever your emotional landscape looks like right now, let's just welcome it. And now bringing awareness into our mental landscape. Just notice the quality of your thinking. Is it fast or slow? Maybe like a rushing stream, or just a placid lake. Whatever it is, let's just welcome it and bring ourselves fully into this moment. And now I just invite you to open your eyes and look around at who else is here. Your fellow travelers, maybe a few people you know, and if you want to take time to just flip through the screens briefly and see who's with us today, that's great. So if you would like, you can introduce yourselves in the chat and just share your location and your organization. So the chat will remain open and visible for the next two sections. So just feel free to continue sharing and engaging throughout our call. All right, I'm so excited to introduce Diane Musho Hamilton Roshi. Diane has been the co-director of the Seven Arrows Zen Center for the last 15 years at least, perhaps longer. She's also an accomplished facilitator, teacher, and mediator, and has written several books integrating mindfulness with skillful, compassionate ways of cultivating right relationship and fostering healthy communities. We're delighted to have Diane's unique blend of deep practice and skillful action in the world as our first speaker in this series. After Diane's talk, we'll have about 15 minutes for Q&A, and then we'll continue to evolve our themes of winter and an important aspect of clearing out space, saying no to open up our space for the future. And we'll have an embodiment practice led by Irene Rockwell. And then you'll have an opportunity to connect in breakout rooms with others from our community. So, Diane, I'm so pleased that you're here. We've known each other for many years, and I really look forward to your talk.
Thank you, Susan. It's a delight for me to be here. And I want to also thank Liz and Irene for thinking of me, and the Lens Foundation for making this available and providing resources for this very important inquiry that we'll be in today. And I see lots of people on the call that I've known in different contexts over the years, and many of you are new to me, but I just want to take a moment to appreciate you all for your practice, for your interest in the Buddha Dharma and for the cultivation of your open heart. I know many of us are feeling a little heavy-hearted in this season of winter, where it's cold here in Salt Lake City, it's cold in Minneapolis, and there's some darkness that we're all working with just in terms of our human heart. So just to say that I'm also very grateful that Dharma practice actually gives us a way to work with our sorrow and to transmute it to compassion and to kindness in the world. So thank you everyone again for being on the call today. It's a tremendous pleasure to have you here. I'm going to switch my view so I can see you instead of seeing me. There we go. So I have been asked to speak as a woman practitioner about leadership in the Dharma. And I'll speak about both organizational leadership and also the challenges of being in the student-teacher relationship when it comes to issues of power, of influence, of allocation of resources. Of course, one of the things that's happening in culture that is a very worthwhile and yet very challenging inquiry is the question of the use of power. And as we move from traditional culture to a modernist culture to a postmodern culture, and we really start to look in these more postmodern times at what's behind the scenes and what is in our subjectivity and what is really going on as opposed to our aspiration of how we would like it to go on. And we look at we're looking straight at genuine abuses of power. And so whenever we do any kind of inquiry into leadership and teaching, inevitably the subject of power becomes part of that inquiry, and then also the way in which we're using it. Because power, by its nature, is simply our ability to galvanize resources, to wield influence, and the real test of use of power is who is it being used on behalf of. And to the extent that power is being used on behalf of the whole, that's a good thing. And to the extent that power is used in the service of private interests or egoic motives, power becomes very problematic, as you know, and that's why the challenge to abuses in our systems and in our organizations and even in our relationships. So we'll get to that, and hopefully I can offer you some ways to think about being in power and being in leadership in ways that are both practical and useful to you. That would be my hope for the call. The other thing I think I want to acknowledge is that when we speak about gender, that again, it's another, you could say it's an emergent in consciousness that gender is not a fixed situation. Gender is fluid, gender identity. And also that even as we know, sexual traits, biological traits can be ambiguous. And that when we talk about it, it's very important to recognize that regardless of our gender identification, whether we consider ourselves to be male, female, non-binary, that we do have these energies. We have energies of activity. We have energies that move, activate, push to some degree, and we have deeply receptive energies. And so I hope that I can speak about this in a way that avoids stereotypes and doesn't pigeonhole anybody. And that if you have exceptions to what it is I'm saying, I hope you feel free to express that, because we're really in an inquiry in which there are patterns, there are trends, there are things we can agree about, and there are always in this kind of conversation going to be exceptions to what it is I have experienced and perhaps what you've experienced. So let's feel free to explore the territory together. And I'm hoping that, as I said earlier, I hope that you can take something away that's of use to you in terms of your organizations and your leadership. My history with the Buddha Dharma is that I grew up in the American West. I was a cowgirl, I was a cowgirl. And, but when I was about 17 years old, 7 of my friends died in a period of about 4 or 5 months. 4 in a plane, 1 in an automobile, 1 in an altercation, and another committed suicide. And it was a very powerful experience because my mind just turned from, you could say, kind of relative considerations to what does it mean to be a human being given the fact that we die? How do we integrate sorrow, genuine sorrow and loss into our experience of being a human? Um, uh, what does it mean? And I studied philosophy, I studied literature, but it wasn't until I encountered the Buddha Dharma that my existential dread and my itch to really come into more intimacy with life and therefore with death itself was really addressed. And so I was very fortunate. I studied philosophy and literature, but then when I got to be, when I went to graduate school in Naropa Institute because I was completely seduced by the beauty of the materials and also Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's writing. And so and without knowing it, going to Naropa Institute was just tremendous medicine for me. It was something beyond, it was healing, it was beyond an education because I received guidance. I received methods for working with my mind and my heart. I was part of a community of growth and learning and development. And I didn't really know as clearly that I needed healing after leaving home. I didn't know that I was traumatized, for example. And so, in a way, for me, it was just a tremendous good fortune to encounter Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's teaching and to experience the Dharma in the context of an education that made sense to me. And it has been the one thing in my life that has been a consistent feature since I encountered it when I was 22. And I say often that I have let my practice down in many ways, but the practice has never let me down. And it gives me even now in these kind of turbulent social times that we're in, that true north, both in terms of the teaching, but also the recognition of who I really am, which is an identity beyond any kind of polarity. And so I'm just deeply grateful to have been able to lead a Dharma-informed life, as I'm sure you feel that way as well. So as a young woman, I honestly, I was kind of on the tail end of the feminist movement. And what I mean is I was young in the movement and I had feminist friends. Sally Kempton, for example, is a friend of mine. I read Adrienne Rich's work and many other writers at the time. And in fact, the women, the ERA, when we tried to pass the amendment, it was defeated in the state of Utah, essentially by the Mormon Church. It was the Mormon Church that actually defeated the ERA. So I was very much involved in the feminist movement, but I was quite young when that happened. But my actual felt experience, because I grew up in a family that was highly matriarchal. My mother had 7 sisters. They were dynamic, they were irreverent, they were rowdy, they wouldn't shut up, they were exciting. And, my dad had to make peace with that part of my mother, and she had to make peace with the fact that he thought he was the patriarch, but in fact wasn't. So that was a very enjoyable upbringing, aside from all the neurosis that I also endured. And then as a young woman, I became was educated in the Dharma, and then I became a professional mediator. And in that context, I also didn't bump up against anything that really felt terribly provocative to my gender identity. That is until I went to work for Ken Wilber. And I transitioned from studying the Buddha Dharma with Trungpa to practicing in the Zen tradition. And then through the Zen tradition, I met Ken. And then I went to work for Integral Institute, and that's been part of my Dharmic education, Ken's work. But when I got there, I was about 44 years old, and I was surrounded by extremely smart, extremely ambitious, and tremendously embodied masculinity, like really, really strong. And for the first time in my life, I started to really notice and pay attention to how males in the culture were relating with the females. And I developed a very significant appreciation for those males, particularly ones who are older than me, that actually really appreciated and tuned in energetically to what the women in the room were saying. And it started to matter to me. And so that was a little bit of a kind of an awakening. And I started in a certain way to almost screen my relationships according to how much we could really hear one another. It really mattered to me. And I'm imagining that many of you have had those kinds of experiences. And luckily, we live at a time where most of the men that I'm around have a very highly developed receptive sense and receptive energy. They're good listeners. They know how to collaborate well. But a lot of times, even in the company of young males, that I think the imperative of testosterone is for real. And I just really began to experience it at that point and started to screen relationships based on that. So that feels like a confession. I don't know that I've ever said that out loud, but I just noticed that that was true for me. And then the other place that I started to experience it was as I became a teacher and I co-founded Two Arrows Zen with my husband. And my husband is some number of years older than I am, and he's formerly the Chief Justice of our Supreme Court here in Utah. I was the Director of Dispute Resolution. That's where we met each other. So we had a workplace romance. It was fully approved of by our HR department, in case you're concerned. So he has a lot of gravitas and a lot of presence, but I experienced something a little bit differently. This is another of the obstacles that I bumped into was there was a way that I started to experience discomfort in people, males and females, with my relationship to, I mean, how powerful is a person who runs a Zen organization, by the way? Not so powerful. But there would seem to be some kind of bump into what felt like discomfort from being in the position I was in. Sometimes it felt as though people were inconvenienced by the fact that I was Michael's wife. So I felt a little bit like the wife problem. Sometimes I felt a little bit like I had too much decision-making power for some people. Sometimes I was subtly encouraged to defer more to my husband in board meetings or in other situations. And so then the difference is being a woman in leadership started to take on some of the dimensions that I've heard female leaders, politicians, people working in the corporate world or in business, just some of the challenges around not feeling that you have an additional set of challenges that you have to navigate that males don't have to navigate. And that started to become more real to me. And I think that it also, if I may, presented a tremendous opportunity for me to grow. And I think that what it presented to me is that I say sometimes that Dharma practice makes us tougher even as we get stronger, even as we get softer, makes us tougher even as we get softer. And I feel like that being a female in leadership, I've also had to get tougher in a certain way. And that while the impersonal or that which is beyond personal domain can be very alive to me on the cushion, for example, that when I'm in relationship, I will sometimes defer to the strengths of my receptivity. And I'm learning how to move more to the strengths of the active side of my character, more willing to take a stand, more willing to have a back and forth, more willing to think strategically, more willing to clarify my goals and the sense of direction, and then build the support that I need to help move the organization along. More willing to almost, I don't know how many of you, anybody watched the Jack Smith testimony this last week? Anybody catch a few minutes of that? Just kind of more willing at certain points to just come from a like unfeeling rational place and let that be good in that moment. You know, just not to, but then to be able to have access to my emotional states when it's really helpful to feel with people. So in a way, the challenge has required me to integrate, if you can tolerate it, my masculine side in a much more conscious way. And the default of moving to my receptivity, to my desire for collaboration, and to, in some ways, you could say, even take more hits as a leader. And that's what I mean about getting tougher even as I've gotten stronger. And I think that what I'm very encouraged by is just the presence of women in the Dharma. In the time when I started, very, very few female teachers. Joanna Macy, Joan Halifax, others, but very few. The number of women on this call, for example, that you're in leadership positions, many of you are in teaching positions. Like there's just been an absolute blossoming of women's perspectives in the Dharma. That collection called The Hidden Lamp of the koans that were compiled by women, really a beautiful volume, the work that's been done on women in Buddhism, by others. So we've seen such a beautiful flowering, and I think all of us are working to manage these energies in ourselves and to learn how to work with them in others. So I think that the main thing that I want to suggest to you all, and I think that this is really hopeful, is that that disciplining and investigating and activating that part of us that knows how to move in a direction, how to set goals, how to overcome limits, how to set boundaries, how to put feeling aside in the pursuing of a goal, and how to bring your team along in a way that they're enthusiastic to follow because the sensations of accomplishment are powerful. Remembering, of course, that the active side of who we are grows through challenge. And so those challenges are invigorating to us and they're good for us. And at the same time, just always understanding the importance of receptivity, how important receptivity is in our sitting. We call it receptive samadhi, our capacity to listen in relationship, our inclination to be more inclusive, to invite more in, more participation, more of who we are, looking at shadow, looking at who it is we're trying to be and how we're showing up and not. And then just being willing to be highly personal when it's indicated as a leader, being willing to feel, express your care, and really model it and build supportive relationships. And I would say that Ken's formulation, and I don't know how you feel about this, but Ken Wilber's formulation that we need to wake up, to awaken, to see the identity beyond form and name and who we really are. The awakening is central to Buddha Dharma, but that we also need to not simply wake up, we need to grow up. And grow up really consists of emotional maturity and development, developing our communication skills, understanding the value of collaboration and negotiation, learning how to problem solve together, that there's a skill set that our Sanghas need to develop and participate in. And I think we're doing that very naturally through the use of counsel, through the use of, like I said, communication skills and listening skills, but that there is a very important skill set that we need to both lead and share with our sanghas so that our relationships have the chance to be as powerful as our sitting is. And then to go back to the issue about power, as part of growing up, to be willing with our students to understand the relationship that human beings make to power, because we know that security, money, sexuality, and power, those are the denser of our energies, and that when power issues become problematic, it takes a tremendous amount of understanding and bravery in a certain way to work with those. And I think it's important to really teach about power dynamics with your students as part of your waking up curriculum. Everybody in our sanghas has occasions when they feel one up or they are one up, and self-responsibility and vision and moving things forward for the group is really important. And then everybody has experiences of being one down. We're one down in our training. We get to learn how to listen, how to surrender our egoic desires, how to participate with wholeness, how to inhabit our humility. And the power is something to be understood, and the use of it needs to be developed. It isn't going away, and trying to consistently distribute it evenly, while it can be helpful, at times hierarchy is just a far more efficient governing principle. So being able to distribute power, but then to galvanize and contract into hierarchy and make decisions and leverage resources sometimes has to be done in a different way. So I think really making power a subject of our practice can be very important. And then finally, I want to just conclude by saying that as Dharma teachers and Dharma leaders, our fundamental purpose is to share and support the recognition of our very indestructible commonality, the fact that we are the same as all things in this universe. And yet, we say in Zen, of course, everything the same, everything different. The particularity of who we are and our very, very specific differences is also very exciting to our nervous system. It's how we learn, it's how we grow, it's how we develop. And so the encounter with our differences and the willingness to work with our differences, explore them, conflict if necessary, but stay in there until you transmute that conflict, is also extremely important in the work that we do as teachers, as leaders, as members of sanghas. And that cultivating the great identity beyond name, beyond form, is the ultimate resting place. It's the ultimate peace. But within that, we're positioned so well to develop really lasting, harmonious, and if I might say, evolutionary relationships, where we're starting to really model for others what's highly possible. And for that, I'm just incredibly grateful to this training and grateful to share my thoughts with you about some of the obstacles that I've worked with. And I think we're going to maybe take a few moments for some questions now, if that's right, Susan, and then we can move on to the rest of the agenda. Thank you, everybody. So it looks like Alexis has a question or a comment. So Alexis, if you'd like to unmute, we'd love to hear from you.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good night, all the in-betweens. Welcome, and good morning, good night, and good afternoon, fellow travelers. I just wanted to know if you would touch on pay equity just a bit, since it's, just us gals here. I know that is not something that we talk about very often, understanding that the teaching should be given freely, but then also understanding that We cannot live for free.
Mhm.
And we have to earn a livelihood. And I've been talking to teachers from lots of different disciplines through the work of IMTA. It's interesting to hear how they're encountering their compensation, their treatment, in comparison to male counterparts. So would love to hear if you have any commentary on that.
Yeah, I certainly have comments on that. Alexis, I'd be curious, would you mind sharing what you've been learning, what you're hearing from people about how they're treated?
Yes. Um, that like in all areas, we are earning cents on the dollar compared to the male counterparts. When we add in other areas of intersectionality, it gets even more interesting, as I
Yeah, would
noted in the
imagine.
chat. Yep.
Mhm.
But just speaking on the gender piece alone,
Mhm.
we make up more of the audience, but we do not necessarily make up more of the folks in the teacher seat.
Mhm.
And when we are in the teacher seat, our
Mhm.
checks look a little bit different.
Yeah, fair.
And there's actually no
Mhm.
it's very transparent,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
It's no secret. So just
Mhm.
wondering if you had any.
Well, I appreciate a couple of things. One is I appreciate you raising it and sharing what your that inquiry that you're involved in is revealing. And I also just appreciate your tone. There's something about how you're asking the question that I can really feel your life force and your energy. And I feel the depth of your concern and care. And I don't feel a tremendous amount of blame or a tremendous amount of you're just I can hear your open mind. So I just want to appreciate the quality with which you're inviting that question. So what I would say is I think that in terms of our evolution towards genuine equity, both in terms of gender, race, whatever it is that's creating differences in how it is we're treating one another and in the very objective domain of equity, of pay, of how we share resources, that there's a few things that we need to take into account. And one is, I think, as women leaders, we've been very creative in the course of our history of learning how to work with resources, whether we have a little bit or whether we have a lot. The creativity that we bring to that is really, really important. I also think we should challenge ourselves on the idea that we should be paid equally. I think some of us have biases that, we're willing to do it for free. Generosity is a Buddhist value. I've got some time on my hands. Of course, I'm going to contribute. So it may be that there's some sort of internal challenge that we need to make around why we're willing to accept less. And then finally, we just got to put our foot down. We need to actually evaluate this. If we're members of boards of these organizations, we need to look at compensation packages. We need to look at making sure that they're fair across the board. And we also need to make sure that as we grow as an organization, that the spiritual endeavor has this built-in challenge that it's sometimes experienced in opposition to the material. Like there's an old bias that if you're spiritually sustained, you don't need much in the way of the material. So I think it's also important to kind of confront that bias as well. And you can also make different choices. In my case, I made a choice as a leader of an organization to keep my day job. And the reason I did that is because I didn't want to be in the predicament of asking my students to support my livelihood. I'm very happy to have them contribute to the organization, and the organization pays me for when I teach, although, it's obviously at a much reduced rate compared to, I would call it a stipend more than pay. And that takes me back to the issue of creativity, which is, I think there are different ways for us to attend to our own material well-being. And for me, I didn't want to mix those too much. But it's very important to me that our administrator is paid well, that the incoming executive director is paid well, and that our finance committee is really reviewing all of our compensation and pricing decisions according to what's fair and the values that we actually have in our organization. So those are a few comments. I happen to be an unpaid executive director, so I kind of know what you're talking about from the inside. And but the truth is, my husband's also unpaid, and we did that because we didn't want the ethical dilemmas that it might both of us make a decent living, and so we didn't want the ethical dilemmas that our students supporting us creates if it's too significant. I've seen that go quite awry for people. This is a big conversation. You guys could spend a couple of calls on this. Thank you, Alexis. Really appreciate that. Is there anything you want to add just to what I said? So in terms of time, Susan, should we move on in the agenda and
We're
then
fine.
come? We're fine?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
All right.
And I
Let me know
see,
when you're ready.
yeah, sure. I think we could take at least another 10 minutes.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I see a question in the chat um, by Tenzin Danso. What particular Buddhist practice has proven transformative in your own leadership, and how has that benefited the work you do in community?
I think I would say there are a couple, and thank you, Tenzin, for your question. I'm going to see if I can find you on my screen. Oh, there you are. Great. Um, well, obviously, sitting meditation, zazen, is the most fundamental practice that has made a difference in my life and in my leadership. And the ability to experience reality and people and my situation with open eyes and an open heart and not be so conscripted by my fear and my egoic motives and my need to be seen and related to in a particular way. So that's the ground. All other practices aside, sitting still is where it's at for me. But to be honest, I think the teachings on karma have been important. And the reason I say that is sometimes I'm whenever I get in a kind of a funky mood about being in leadership and I'm tired of people and I'm tired of being challenged and feeling like the responsibility is on me, I get very curious about what is it that led to me being in this position? And what is it in my life that not only becoming a practitioner, but ensuring that the practice is there for others? Like I'm in a karmic situation here. And for me to remember the immutable laws of karma and that it's not a coincidence that I'm here, that I must have a motive to want to ensure the practice for others. And there's some karmic momentum for me to do that. And then I can get over feeling sorry for myself. It's kind of that moment of going like, no, this is what you need to do. Thank you. I appreciate that question. Kind of makes me cry a little bit, honestly. Thank you.
Tenzin, anything you'd like to say in response? You can just unmute yourself.
Oh, hello, everybody. It's lovely to be with you, my dear sisters and dear ones. However, maybe you're not a sister to yourself, but whatever you are a dear one to me. And thank you, Diane. Yeah, I think especially for someone like you with so much of a long-term practice, really a practice of your awareness, how you came to the Dharma from your suffering and what you were looking for, and also your timeline, the era that you were in. It's a little bit different than mine. I'm a little bit younger, not much, but I was informed by all those things you were working on, the Equal Rights Amendment and all these things that were inspiring a teenage girl in the 70s, thinking about leadership and stepping forward into new spaces that weren't necessarily open. And the Dharma, I mean, I love how you brought the karma into it because that's really powerful to hear you name that. And it's really helpful, actually, for me as a nun. I'm an ordained American nun, and there aren't many of us. And now in my vows and my robes for almost a decade, which is, where I want to continue to live from and die in. But it's a quite unique position. And sometimes that's a helpful way to think about it karmically. Like, yeah, I put the wheels in motion and I want to keep the Dharma wheel in motion. And when it gets really like nitty gritty, okay, this is part of what I signed up for. And yeah, the tenderness of the growing and the softness, but remaining a strong backbone. That makes me think a lot also of the importance of the sitting meditation in my own practice.
Yeah.
You know, a strong back and a soft
Yeah.
front.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Fran Berry is in the chat has raised her hand.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Diane. I I am the president of the Tallahassee Chan Center. My teacher is Guagu, and we just received a grant from the Lens Foundation, which we're very excited about. But what I wanted to ask is more about kind of what conferences, what associations, what kind of national connections or international connections do you use, maybe beyond your lineage group, as advice for me and maybe for others who are, looking to connect with other Buddhists and share our practice and the joy that we have. So that's kind of a general, broad question, but I thought you might have some observations. Thank you. I've enjoyed listening to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Fran. Well, I mean, the American Zen Buddhist Association is a very interesting national organization because in the American Zen Buddhist Association, there are Chan practitioners, there are Zen practitioners of both the Rinzai and the Soto schools, there are Korean Zen practitioners. So that organization is one that seems like you might really enjoy connecting with. I've participated with the Soto Zen Buddhist Association on a national level and also the White Plum, which is my Zumi Roshi's lineage. So that he's my Dharma grandfather. And I've been very much a part of the White Plum Association for many years. So I belong to those three associations. And then my connection with the Lens Foundation came because the Lens Foundation was very generous with my teacher in getting his Dharma Center established years ago. And then Irini and Susan are both from the Naropa Shambhala community. And being connected with them and with the Shambhala community has kept my love of Tibetan Buddhism and my connection to Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche alive. I would say internationally, my work internationally is mainly through Ken Wilber's network because he's so widely read, and that whenever I've been invited to speak or teach in different parts of the world, it's usually been through the work that I've done with him. So I'm highly connected to, you could call it the integral world outside of the US, but in the US, I've mainly participated with the lineages and the associations in the Buddhist tradition. So I like to keep, I really appreciate this different input. I mean, it's very important for us to listen to each other, experience one another's aspirations, challenges, creative responses. We can bitch when we're together once in a while. That's helpful always. I think a good gripe goes a long way.
Thank you so much. That's useful.
Sure.
I pretty much, the Chan Center is part of Dharma Drum mountain lineage. My first association with Buddhism was through Chogyam Trungpa's group for 10 years when I was in Kentucky.
Okay.
And, his readings, his teachings, and Pema Chodron are just fantastic. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great. Let's just take two more. We have Satyani in the chat, with her hand up, and then we have something from the chat. So I'll read that one when we're complete with Satyani.
Yeah.
Great. What's on your mind? You need to unmute.
Thank you so much. Would you please speak about approaches that you found successful as a leader, that because you talked about the need to inspire. So to inspire the team, not only to embrace your priorities, but to also collaborate and cooperate. And in a non-hierarchical fashion, if that's something you have experience with. And then on the flip side of that, how do you inspire them to work through and resolve conflicts?
Mm.
Is it okay with you, Satyani, if I switch it and start with conflict first and then go to the collaboration and the inspiration? So as a mediator, conflict resolution has been a big part of my training. And one of the things that I've been working on, and that I would invite all of you to work on as well, is how much the consciousness, the world of consciousness awareness practices has really turned its attention towards embodiment. I mean, we know within Buddha Dharma that the body is the expression of the Dharma. But what we don't see very clearly is that one of the reasons that people have such a hard time in conflict is because the stress hormones that immediately start to become dripped into your bloodstream of cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, those are usually what it is we're moving away from in conflict. You know, we have a conflict style. We can be accommodating, we can be avoidant, we can be aggressive. But what we're coping with often is the experiences in the body that are really designed for us to seek safety. So whenever a conflict arises, the problem is we don't know how to deal with sensation. So what I've been working on quite a lot over, say, the last 5 or 6 years is really starting with when we have differences to really work in coaching people on, before we get into the content of the different, let's just take a minute to feel. And let's take a minute to just notice how quickly difference, which is exciting in our nervous system, immediately turns to threat. And how the minute that it turns to threat in the body, we can know all we're doing really is coping, right? And we may be coping with an aggressive style or an avoidant style, but we're not learning. And this is really important. When stress hormones are filling the body, literally our memory is impeded, our ability to think goes away, so that we really have to find a way to soothe the system. And we don't have to be completely harmonious, but we have to soothe the system in order to learn to work with difference. We have to work with the embodiment. That's the important thing. So asking your students and your boards and people to hold difference and sit with it for a minute and explore it. Because what you'll notice is what happens lots of times is people quickly move to compromise or to accommodating to get rid of the sensations because difference feels so threatening. So true collaboration depends on people being able to sustain differences and to sustain them in the right kind of energy. Like our administrative assistant is a fine chef, and she knows very well that how you work with temperature when you cook makes all the difference to the outcome. How you work with temperature when you're dealing with difference makes all the difference to the outcome. You have to have enough difference that it's exciting and that you're disclosing new information and you're exchanging ideas, but not so much that you're coping and not so little that you're simply adapting. So learning how to do that is the key. And then as a culture gets more and more used to it, it becomes less threatening. Difference becomes more exciting, and you can stay in that optimal realm because people have seen good outcomes and creative outcomes and energy and information come out of it instead of just everybody feels bad, goes to their respective corners, gossips about everybody else, and then somebody makes a decision in the background and implements it. You know, we've all been part of that too, right? So that's that. I really think if you can work on that, and my books generally do deal with that. The latest book that I wrote with a younger student of mine is called Waking Up and Growing Up, and it really talks about the importance of these skills embedded within the practice. I hope that wasn't too long-winded. Do you have any follow-up questions you want to ask her?
Well, I suppose getting people to embrace their differences, do you have any guidance on that process?
Yeah, I do. Start in the shallow end. You know, just notice like in groups of twos or threes, like let's discover how we're the same, and now let's bring up a difference and notice the impact on our body. And it's just going to be a small difference, not one that where a lot's at stake, but just a difference in preference or a difference in generation or a difference in a certain kind of worldview. And then I mean, I'm a facilitator by trade, right? So I'm always drawn to the fight. I love fights. So as soon as the fight starts to erupt, then what I want to do is just encourage people, hey, this is super interesting. Nobody's bad, nobody's wrong. We don't have to dominate each other. There's plenty of intelligence here to be shared. Let's hear from everybody here. This is really good. So you can, as a leader, kind of pace that willingness to get your differences out on the table and really start to learn from them. So it takes a little effort and a little bit of skill, but it sure makes a difference, I'll tell you.
Yes, thank you. And then how do you inspire people who are already don't need convincing? They embrace whatever it is you're bringing forward.
Yeah, well, I think I inspire them by just appreciating what they're bringing, and how lucky I am to get to have their gifts and their enthusiasm and their willingness and just the joyfulness that we get out of being able to affiliate with people who care about the Dharma. So my inspiration often comes from just loving the people I'm around and sharing that with them.
Thank you so much. I'm just
Thank
going to
you.
read. I'm just going to read this. Oh, there you are. Great, Hanraku. So, you're our last person for this particular Q&A, and
Yeah, yeah,
and then we'll move
yeah,
on to some other things. What would you like to
yeah.
share?
Thank you, Diane, for being here. And I'm
Thank
also
you.
White Plum, so it's
Oh,
really
good.
lovely to
Okay.
meet you. Yeah,
Nice to meet you too.
yeah. My question comes from the place of how do we begin to move the conversation as white-bodied individuals who are in
Hmm.
leadership positions? How do we begin to actually shift from the interpersonal interactions
Hmm.
into making changes in an institutional or systemic
Hmm.
way?
Hmm.
So that we actually mirror some of the differences within the institution that we're
Hmm.
hoping to see and feel in our practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course it does. I mean, one of the formulations that I've learned from Ken Wilber, because he basically talks about the evolution of consciousness, not just the evolution of the exteriors, but the evolution of our own understanding and our own interiors. And he often uses the model that we grow from egocentric to ethnocentric to world centric to cosmic centric. It's a more evolutionary model. Now, you could also argue that cosmic centric is present through all those stages if you awaken to it. So I think if you use a model of growth, then the personal lays the groundwork for the interpersonal. And the interpersonal lays the ground for the institutional. And the institutional lays the groundwork for the systemic. And so we just have to see those as building blocks with each other. So, for example, I was involved, it's been a number of years ago, but I was involved in a big initiative within the Utah judiciary on a systemic level in both the criminal justice system and uh, the judiciary itself to look at race bias and to really start, because this is the forum people go to for neutrality and for fairness. And yet people are having experiences from stops and arrests all the way through incarceration and uh, what is it when you get out? I can't remember right this minute, but all the way through that there's bias, right? And it was a very powerful, um, a very, very powerful and very challenging thing to start to ask clerks and probation officers and police and judges to really start to examine their own biases. And I will tell you that the people who had done the interpersonal work were far better at it than the ones who hadn't. So really, I would just see it as a natural outgrowth of more complexity and greater scale, and that it's all related, and we're moving in the direction of from me to our to everyone to everything. And it's just, we need to be able to put our attention in the biggest, at the biggest possible level and work there as well. So I really see it as a natural evolution, but one that needs to happen.
Thank you so much. All right, we're going to shift gears here a little bit. And I'd like to introduce Irini Rockwell, who's going to lead us in an embodiment practice. As Diane was just saying, embodiment is so important for the work that we're doing. So to introduce Irini, for the last 2 decades, Irini Rockwell has been committed to offering the deep tantric practices of the 5 wisdoms to the world. Through the 5 Wisdoms Institute, she offers classes, teacher training, and a robust community to help people discover more fully who they are and also to become the leaders that the world needs now. Formerly a dancer and a psychotherapist, she now blends all of this with her lifelong practice of tantric meditation. She will now guide us in an embodiment practice.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Diane. It's such a delight to be with both of you on this call, having such long connections with each other through Shambhala and Naropa and Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. So here we are, and what I'm going to do is say a few words first about where we're going with this practice. So in terms of aligning with the season of winter, which is a theme of this call, is I've come up with 3 R's. The 3 R's: retreat, rest, and recuperate. And that's summed up in a word we've been banding around, no. Learning to say no. So our yes is what keeps us driving us forward, often quite ego-bound, and a no creates a sense of spaciousness for a deeper, we could say more authentic yes to unfold. So that yes is actually coming from the no, the yes is actually more powerful because we've accessed inner resources, our strengths, and our sense of leadership. So knowing, N-O-ing, it leads to knowing, K-N-O-W-ing. So knowing leads to knowing is my little koan here. Okay, so we know this. Every time we sit on our cushion, we say no. That's built in to who we are as Dharma practitioners and meditators. So meditation is actually a labor of love, of self-love, of self-caring. And now to say a few words about tantric practices, which I've followed for many decades, aside from just our shamatha vipassana practice. Tantric practices work with energy, and they work with energy in our bodies and also the phenomenon, seasons, weather, etc. So energy is commonly, with most of us, focused in our heads, in or around in our heads, thinking. So the main focus of embodiment practices is to bring that energy into our body. And dropping in to that profound intelligence of our body is very empowering. So from this no, we come into empowering. So I have many embodiment practices that I use. one of them, obviously, or maybe not obviously, of the five wisdoms, which is sort of my main teaching, has five postures developed by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche and senior students. And also a practice that I've done with Khenpo Tsultrim Gyatso Rinpoche, which is more about raising heat, going into bliss, working with a subtle inner yoga of our body. So this one is actually more connected to a combination of working with elements as well as being informed by the inner yoga practices of the subtle body. So I call it elemental embodiment. And just to note here that our most primal aspect is that we are made of elements: earth, water, fire, and air, and space, which is the basic accommodation of them. So interestingly, primal being is not about who we are, which is more psychological, but what we are, which is more physical, elemental, primal. So here I'm going to go into the actual guiding this meditation. And to get an embodied experience, it's good to close our eyes. So I invite you to close your eyes and take your posture. We're going to go through all five elements in an embodied way. And I'm using the elements in a particular specific way that's informed by inner yoga practices of the subtle body. So first we do earth. Feel earth, particularly in your hips, where your seat meets your cushion, your chair, and feel that sense of grounding. Actually feel the heaviness, the substantiality of your body. You are made of earth, flesh, and bones. So ground that. Feel a sense of settling, grounding, establishing an affinity to good Mother Earth. I am Earth, grounded, settled. And then we bring in the water element. The water element we're using as purification. And we start at the top of the head and visualize or sensualize, as I like to say, that there's a shower at the top of your head. You're under one of those top of the head showers, and it's coming down, this pure, clear water. But instead of going outside your body, have it come into your body. So it seeps through the crown of your head and starts to come down your forehead, feeling as it goes that it keeps purifying, clarifying, past the eyes, right inside your body, past your nose, your mouth, chin, coming right into your throat, your neck, feeling that sense of clearing, purifying, and coming into your torso, upper torso, past your heart, coming to your solar plexus, gently coming down, purifying this water which is so clear. And coming into your abdomen, your belly, and then coming into your pelvic area where it just goes out your body, and this warm, pure water melts into your earth. So we've grounded with earth, we've purified with water, and now we're going to work with air, breathing in a specific way to bring our consciousness into our belly. So take a breath in and bring it to your belly and just stay with your breath in your belly. Just hold it. And then let go. Breathe out. We'll do this a total of 3 times. So once again, inhale. Bring your breath to your belly. Hold it in your belly. And by doing this, we're bringing our consciousness into the most central part of our being, our belly. Once again, breathe out and then breathe in, holding the air. And breathe out. And now that we've established a Buddha belly, as I like to call it, nice fat Buddha belly, soft. Right in the middle of that Buddha belly is a ember. We're going to work with fire. This ember is like 3 or 4 finger widths below your belly button. And in many traditions, it's called the hara. In this tantric tradition, it's called your secret center. And that secret center, that bit of ember there, is as powerful as a bit of uranium. And feel that this is sometimes hard to feel, but in your very center of your belly, feel that ember, and with the breathing that we've done, just do soft breathing, using like a bellows to ignite that ember and let it become a little flame. Feeling the power of your center of your being grow. Then lastly, we rest in space. We've grounded with earth. We've purified with water. We've brought our consciousness to the center of our being with our breath. And we've ignited the vital fire within us. And we can rest in space. And now allow your eyes to open and take your embodied self with you.
Thank you, Irini.
Okay,
Beautiful.
that's what we have for today. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. So now it's time for us to join breakout rooms in groups of 4, and you'll have 20 minutes total. So please give each person an opportunity to share their responses to the talk or to the embodiment practice or both. And then you can just have an open discussion. So we're going to put a few prompts in the chat that you can use if you like, basically just to introduce yourselves. And then how does stillness link to empowerment in your life is one question you might consider. And what is one theme from the talk or from the practice that you would like to reflect on? So we'll be going into our groups and enjoy your time with one another. We'll have more opportunity to engage with Diane when we come back. Welcome back, everyone. We'd love to hear from you. How were your groups, and are there any highlights that you'd like to speak to, or would you like to share any questions? What's on your mind now? And again, you can raise your electronic hand by going to the bottom of your screen and clicking on React, or you can add something to the chat. But it would be great to hear some voices. And Diane is with us again, as well as Irini. So if you have any questions or comments. Let's see, Carrie, I think I saw you raise your, no, you didn't. Okay. Yeah. How was it to be in your groups? I really enjoyed the one I went to.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, we got to some real practical issues like how to recruit women for your board. So that was helpful. I don't know, maybe Diane, you could say something about, how do you encourage women who often are very, very busy to want to, I don't know, bring their leadership into the community in more powerful ways? Are there any ways that you've been able to recruit people or to even train them or cultivate them?
Well, we just need to make sure we promise some girlfriend time.
It's okay.
Get some girlfriend time in there and they'll show up for sure.
Great. Cindy's saying, let me go back to the chat. I really appreciated the connection and wisdom shared in such an easy and open space. That's certainly something that we want to cultivate in all of these calls is, to create connections and to really cultivate yet another Sangha of women practitioners and leaders who are exploring all of this. Susan, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'm in Portland, Oregon. And first off, I want to thank the Lens Foundation for the grant we received, which is going into our weekly women's Sangha and supporting that group and that teacher within our community. We, since September of 2024, have gone through a massive reorganization because our guiding teacher was forced out due to inappropriate relationship and activity. And so we are a reorganized board of 3 women, 2 men, and Maggie and Karen are both on this in this group today.
Oh, I see both of them
Yes.
making hand gestures. Hello.
And so I think we ended up on the board because we knew that board positions were opening up, and we so wanted our Sangha to reorganize and stay together because it's such a wonderful insight tradition Sangha. So we volunteered and sort of nominated ourselves to become part of the board and went through the process. And so now we are moving about trying to, develop the right skill set to lead the Sangha. And we know how important our programming is to meet the needs of our Sangha through our weekly groups and our retreats and the classes that we're offering. One of our new teachers who will probably end up to be one of our lead teachers is female and a very good fit for our Sangha. And so we're going through and have gone through a lot of changes. Of course, power distribution it has, pretty much spread out. We get a lot of communication from members of the Sangha. We're always looking for ideas and trying to make sure we're just making the right decisions and sort of ruled by right effort, right action. So it's very much front and center for us to have women active in our Sangha. And because of the community we're in, we really would love to have more diversity and reintroduce our children's program. And I know it will come with time, but it's important right now for us to just stay front and center with our own personal practice and making sure that we're developing the counsels we need to carry us through when problems do come up. So it's a very exciting time, and it's a very hardworking time because we're a working board. So we're doing everything we can think of to be present and move forward with deep listening and the right view. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Susan. Other comments or questions? Or Diane, anything you'd like to share?
I shared in my small group, and maybe I'll just say it now, is that I really just the call itself is filling me with a lot of appreciation for, where we're at in our personal transformation, but also where we're at in our cultural evolution, and that what we're really aspiring for in terms of diverse sanghas and fair treatment and equity and fair power distribution. It's all inviting us to really kind of be and see and include more of who we really are. And I just think that's an awesome opportunity and an awesome challenge. And so is whatever everyone's doing in relationship to just simply expanding who you think you are as a either as an individual or as a group, I mean, that's just got to be good in the long haul. So I'm really, it's just got to be good. So I'm just very proud of everyone.
Thank you. Alina, I see your hand up.
Yes. First of all, thank you for having this forum. This is just absolutely amazing. I was in a wonderful group, and everybody seemed to have that one thing that really was showing up was the no, saying no. Really learning to say no. It is a journey. It's not that easy. And for me personally, it took almost my whole lifetime to have the courage to start to say no. And so I for all of us, that seems to be an important point. So thank you for bringing that up. But what I heard, and that's probably more for me personally, is about you, Diana, you said about conflict. And I so remember, I was this idyllic person, monastic, everything has to be peaceful, conflict is bad, really taking just always the high road. avoiding conflict. And I have learned after all these many years in my old age that conflict can be really powerful. It really can is a powerful to really get closer inside of me and really see what's going on within myself, and really analyzing that. And also it came for me to start to say no. That's then for me when the conflict started to happen. And it is literally a journey. I think it's a Dharma journey to learn that, and to learn to accept that conflict can be actually something powerful. So thank you for all of that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Good. Satyani, welcome back.
Thank you so much. Well, in our discussion, which was a lovely discussion, the Venerable made a point, was beginning to make a point about whether or not there's an existence of a creator, and what the Buddhist perspective was on that. And I was wondering if it's okay with everyone for the Venerable to say a little more about that, because my personal experience in teaching meditation, because there are many Christians in America who want to learn meditation and often ask about the Buddhist perspective on whether or not God, the creator, exists. So I'd love for the Venerable to say a little bit more if they would like to.
Well, that could be a whole another 2-hour Zoom beyond that. But what I want to say, thank you, Sister Satyani, for that. But basically, it goes back to reasoning. And what our group was talking about was, appreciating the idea of saying no in order to know. So that when we have a debate, at the nunnery, we have to learn different perspectives. We have to study the Hindu perspective that asserts a creator in order to be able to uphold our own Buddhist perspective of what the Buddha found, which is there is no creator. The mind is the forerunner. But we have to learn each perspective really well to try to understand the thoughts of what the others are really believing in out of respect, so that when we get to a higher truth through reasoning, through rationality, both sides win. It's not in order to it's not really like a Socratic debate where you're really trying to beat the opponent. You're just trying to get at the highest insight to truth. And this is how analytical meditation really helps us. It's also why the calm abiding has to start first, so that you always have clarity of mind, so you can respond very quickly with a deeper insight, a more valid insight, or a more valid question to somebody. But I would say, because I also work in a lot of interfaith, I don't think teaching meditation, it's really wise or skillful to bring up these topics. I think Christians believe in God and God is love. This is wonderful. Buddhists believe in the immeasurable loving kindness and compassion. I think it's good to leave people where they are located in their tradition, and they can still benefit from meditation. I always say we're all breathing. The oneness of the humanity is everybody wants the happiness, does not want the suffering. We all can take breath together. That's beyond religion. That's just a basic fact of life. We all need healthy breath. We all enjoy the meditative process of relaxing through the breath. And we can grow a warmth in our heart center by being with each other, focusing and grounding on the loving kindness and compassion. I think the other thing that I was sharing, because Norm was in our group and he's a lawyer, so we're talking also about the importance of reasoning and debate and right speech, is just also holding that noble silence sometimes, so that people can bring their belief systems in with them. They can be a great Christian and still really benefit from meditation, from Buddhist meditation. This is really true. One of my teachers in Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo, she lived in Assisi for 6 years in Italy, and she worked a lot with the Catholic nuns and the Catholic community, teaching just simple shamatha, calm abiding meditation. And this just really has to do with the kindness of benefiting the others to help them find peace of mind that way. So I wouldn't really get too much into the theological debates. This really wouldn't be helpful. Not in this country right now. This is what we do inside the nunnery and the monastery. And historically speaking, this is how the Nalanda University in India grew so much because the Buddhist monks debated the Hindus and they had higher reasoning than a lot of the Hindus. Whoever won the debate had to join the other guy's religion. And that's how Nalanda became the world's largest university through, the greater part from like the first century CE till about the ninth century. Had over 10,000 monk scholars and nun scholars there. But right now in our country, we really, my own humble opinion is we've got to just focus much more on what you said, Satyani, just loving on people. What Diane said, trying to understand where they're coming from, put ourselves in their perspective. That's kind of where this debate idea came from, was we try to understand, well, what do Hindus really believe in? What do Christians really believe in? Well, all theists are theists. They believe in a creator God. That's good for them. That's the right path for them. As my ordination master, my teacher, His Holiness the Dalai Lama said, we are diverse people. It's like we want many flavors of the ice cream. We know that as individual people. We need the many flavors of the religions. Obviously we do, So this now is like just focusing on the benefit of the meditation is bringing more peace, bringing more togetherness within our differences. It's even more beautiful. Let them be good Christians.
Yeah,
Let
thank
them
you,
be good
Venerable.
Hindus. Let them be
That's
good.
beautiful. Yeah,
Let them be good Taoists. Let them be good Jews. Let them be good Muslims. I teach all these college students at Bates. They're coming from all backgrounds. Some of them not at all, but we're all breathing together. Then we
right.
find the oneness of the humanity. Very good.
Thank you. Lovely. And there's a comment from Mushim in the chat about, I think, really holding a very broad perspective and through our language, not using terms that might alienate people. So you can read it in more depth if you would like. I'm going to ask Irini for a comment and then ask Diane to kind of close out this section. And then we'll have some final remarks from Liz. So, Irini, would you like to make any comment at this point? You're muted.
As always, this is so inspiring. Thank you, Venerable Tenzin Desil. Really appreciated your last comments there. For me, what's coming up is I am so, in terms of Tantric Buddhism, I'm so interested in how we, and Diane brought this up too, how we have both our feminine and our masculine aspects. We need both. And that's what makes us a whole person. To deny our more engaging, going out, making things happen is not the point. But if it's not backed by this peaceful, open potentiality of the feminine, then that goes awry. So they work together. Feminine, masculine work together. And that, what I feel, is really important in my journey.
Thank you. Lovely to hear. Diane, would you make a few comments?
Yeah, I'd like to just finish, if I may, with a poem from the great Sufi poet Hafez, where he talks about identity. He says, "I've learned so much from God that I can no longer call myself a Christian, a Buddhist, a Hindu, a Muslim, or a Jew. Truth has revealed so much of itself to me that I can no longer call myself a man, a woman, an angel, or even pure soul. Love has befriended me so completely, it has turned to ash and freed me of every concept and image my mind has ever known." Thank you so much for having me, everybody.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you so much, Diane. And now, Liz, I wonder if you have any closing comments.
Well, I would just like to thank everybody, every single person on this call today for being on the call. It's been a pleasure to meet you and see you, even if you didn't speak, because there's a feeling to it. And the feeling is just a shared, I would say, love for each other that we get on these calls. They're quite wonderful. So again, thanks to Diane. It's been another wonderful exploration of women leaders in Buddhism. We do this uniquely, each person, but we just learn so much from each other. And I think that's part of the beauty of these calls. There's no real hierarchy on these calls. We're just learning from each other. And it's very special. So we just put the space out and then people are diving right in. So we will have another call. It'll be the theme of spring. It'll be April 30th. All of you are invited because you're already on the list. The other thing that we're doing on the Lens Foundation is there's such a warm feeling and a desire for follow-up after each call. We are going to create a platform, and the software is called Circle. We're developing it now. It'll be places where you can put your name, your chat, any conversations you want to continue. You can put books, videos, as long as they're on this topic, okay? Almost everyone here is an author, so we don't want your entire bibliography, but if it's actually a useful book on women in Buddhism, then it'll be a place to share all kinds of resources. So that platform will come up soon. This was filmed, so we will put this on the Lens Foundation website, probably be up in about a week. And when it comes up, we'll write an email. Again, all of you are on the list, and it's simple enough to go in and just send an email and say, hey, here's the link if you want to find it. And that is really what we have to say. Looking forward to this, another wonderful gathering again.
Well, thank you everyone for being here.
Yeah.
And let's close our time together by bowing in whatever way you would like to do. So let's bow in appreciation, and also let's dedicate the merit that we've accumulated in our session today for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Thank you.
See you again in April.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This was really wonderful.
Thank you, Diane.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks a lot, you guys.
Thanks so much. Peace and blessings.